If you go to a small town called Jessup in southeast Georgia, you can have the pleasure of visiting one of the oldest movie theaters in the state. The Strand was originally opened in 1924 as a single-screen cinema, showing silent films of the day. Over 30 years ago, in 1988, a second screen was built onto the theater, allowing more showings throughout the day in an attempt to increase income by the owners. For a while, it worked. The theater stayed open until 2009 before finally folding, closing its doors for 8 years before a local couple bought the property and renovated the entire theater, adding another screen for a total of 3. They renovated the auditoriums with modern amenities, HD projectors, reclining leather armchairs, and small tables at each seat for home-cooked food you could order and eat during movies. The place has been booming the past couple of years, much to the delight of local cinema lovers and history buffs. I was fortunate enough to get hired on as a caretaker just a year after it reopened. From what the owner told me, they had some strange things happening at night and wanted someone on the premises at all times in order to keep an eye on things. He didn't really go into much detail, just saying that they frequently found things out of place, projectors left on, and playing films when they opened the next morning, things like that. They offered me a full-time salary, access to the kitchens, and a small 2-bedroom apartment right above the theater, so I jumped on the opportunity. Anyone would have been a fool not to, right? I was fresh out of college and moved back to Jessup to be close to my ailing grandparents. They weren't getting along as well as they used to, and the only other family close by didn't really seem to give a shit about them, so I felt responsible. Living with them proved difficult, though, especially being a younger guy right out of college, if you get my meaning. The Strand gave me the opportunity I needed, only 5 minutes from my grandparents, so I could check in on them any time. So, I've been living here for 2 years now. In that time, I've met a beautiful woman, proposed to her, and we're due to get married in a couple of months. My grandparents passed away back in November, and there's not really anything tying me to Jessup anymore. So, the lovely lady and I have decided to move on once we get married, and I figured I should write down my experiences. Things I wish I'd known before starting my tenure here. I'll be taking down any stories I remember that could help my replacement, and anything that happens in the next couple of months. This is the survival guide to the Strand. Before we get started, I don't really mean survival guide in the literal sense. Most of the, shall we say, entities here are friendly and mean no harm outside of the frequent pranks. There are some things, however, that go out of their way to try and bring misery. So, along with these recollections will be a few rules imparted. I would recommend writing them down, as they could save a massive headache or possibly your life. 1. When you hear a movie playing in any of the auditoriums, do not, under any circumstances, watch it. Don't attempt to turn off the projector. Simply let the film play until morning. This is the first and most important rule for a reason. I was at the theater for 3 weeks before I heard the first movie playing. It sounded like some sort of war movie. Gunshots going off, people screaming. I figured the projector had been left on. We did classic cinema every Wednesday, and this week the showing was Paths of Glory, so it wouldn't have surprised me to see Kirk Douglas in World War II up on the screen. Nothing prepared me for what I saw walking through the theater door. The setting was modern day, in the middle of a sun-scorched village that appeared to be somewhere in the Middle East. A group of soldiers were moving through the town. Children were playing on the streets, vendors selling their wares from kiosks. Everything looked peaceful. I thought it was some new independent movie until the soldiers' faces were shown. My mouth fell open as the scene panned over their faces one by one, revealing one as a younger woman, no older than 23. Brunette hair was tied up in a ponytail, and freckles dotted her face from her chin to her hairline. Catherine, my sister. She was on her second tour in the Middle East, an army medic. She enlisted right after high school, figured she would do her 2 years, then take her GI Bill and do something else with her life. Then she decided she wanted to help people as a medic while she was in training. The girl was always looking out for other people, always trying to help. I hadn't heard from her in a couple of weeks, but she was due to come home next month as far as I was aware. One of the kids threw the ball they were playing with and it bounced off the curb towards the troops. Kath picked it up as it rolled by her, looking towards the child running after. She was smiling, holding the ball out to the kid with a welcoming gesture. There was a brief pop before her smile was blown to pieces, bursting out in a red mist. Others began screaming as more shots popped off around the street, soldiers and bystanders getting hit in every direction. The screen focused in on Catherine, though. She was struggling. The bullet had only hit the bottom half of her head, and she was bleeding out while fighting to breathe. The image moved closer to her face, as I could see the light fade from her eyes. Then, the film restarted. I felt hot tears running down my face as I ran from the theatre and vomited in the nearest trash can. I knew Kath was okay. Mum had said they talked yesterday. She had to be okay. It all looked so real, though. I took a bottle of bourbon from the concession bar and went to my room. I drank almost half the bottle, crying the entire time, before blacking out. I woke up the next morning and called Mum first thing to see if she had heard from Kath. They talked right before. Everything was fine. The film stayed at the back of my mind for a few days. I drank myself to sleep for the next week, trying to forget about it. It finally slipped away after a couple of weeks, just in time for everything to be brought back fresh. March 8th, 2018. I was out grocery shopping when Dad called. Dad never called me. When I answered, I could hear Mum wailing in the background. Kath had been killed. Her squad was ambushed as they were moving through a small village. Closed casket funeral. It went down just like in the film. I've heard more films playing at night. I can sometimes pick out voices of people I recognize. Grandma's voice was discernible back in October when one of them played. I just put headphones on now, try to drown them out and grab a drink. I hope you drown them out as well. There's a lot more that's happened in the almost 2 years I've been there. I had to get this one out of the way though, and it's dredged up a lot of awful memories. I'm going to take a break and have a drink, then I'll write up some more. Until then, hug your loved ones.